We're about to dive into one of the most talked about and sometimes misunderstood parts of the college admissions process. It's the dreaded SAT. And joining me today is my special co-host, Elle. Elle is a longtime veteran Alpha student. She is going to talk all about our Alpha philosophy when it comes to the SAT and why we think the SAT isn't really about how smart you are. It's not like an IQ test. We're going to explain why and how anyone can be in the top 10%, not just top students. Top 10%, for your knowledge, is 1350, and that's something that we say at Alpha we can help deliver our kids. So, Elle, you've got some wild claims about the SAT. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Future of Education podcast, hosted by MacKenzie Price. MacKenzie is the founder of a revolutionary new school model that's disrupting education through AI. Join us as we discuss the latest in education innovation.
So first of all, you're a senior.
I'm a senior this year, yes.
So you've been thinking about the SAT for the last year or so. Like we spend time on it starting junior year.
Right.
And then kind of finish this up because college application season is right on here. Mm-hmm. And there are some things that we think at Alpha that are probably a little different. And I'm going to start because, you know, I'm an old lady. I'm going to tell you the story of my SAT, the lore of my SAT world.
Awesome.
Okay. Back in the day, like you would basically just show up, take the SAT and like, hope it went well. Mm-hmm. And maybe take it a second time and that was kind of it. And there wasn't a ton of like prep. You might get a book, maybe. In fact, actually, I do think I did get to take a class and I was hoping I would really improve and I got basically the exact same score. It was kind of that. And I think in some ways a lot hasn't changed from when I was taking the SAT back in 1993 to now with regard to how people think about approaching the SAT. What do you think is like the way kids generally approach the SAT?
I mean, I think it really depends, but the way we're always taught here at Alpha is the SAT could be about anything. It's just chance that it's about reading, writing, and math. Mm-hmm. It's not this IQ test where it's like you have to be math and reading smart to get a good score. It's like it could have been about, you know, interior design. You know, it's just trying to prove to colleges that you can study for a test and you can perform under pressure. That's what you're trying to show to colleges. Not anything else. No, it's not an IQ test. But I think a lot of students think that it is. And I think that a lot of them, if they take a practice test and they don't automatically get a 1500, they just group themselves, okay, I'm not that kind of student. I guess, you know, test optional was a thing for a while, but now with schools re-implementing it's becoming mandatory again. I think that students become resigned very easily. But I think that there's so many resources now, like on YouTube, you know, there's endless SAT channels. I know a lot of students actually create SAT channels. Like that's like a huge thing is that if you can score above a 1550, you're considered an SAT expert.
And for those who are maybe kids are younger and it's been a little while since you yourself was taking the SAT, the max score is 1600. Yes. It's made up of two components. There's basically the reading, writing portion and then the math portion. Mm-hmm. You can get an ultimate score of 800 in each of those to make up the perfect 1600. Mm-hmm. You know, I will say Elle's older sister
got a perfect 1600.
Set the bar pretty high. She got a perfect 1600 a couple years ago when she was doing the college application process. So I will say Alpha students have definitely been shown like, hey, it's possible you can do this.
Right.
And I want to read a tweet before we get into a little bit more detail on this. This actually came from our principal. Our Alpha principal put this tweet out the other day. And here's what he said. He said, SAT scores were released today. 3 girls in my Alpha High group were described by their parents as not math science girls. They've been focused on other pursuits, launching a Broadway musical, competing for Miss Teen USA, building millions of TikTok followers, and becoming a nationally recognized teen dating expert. Their SAT math scores. Girl 1,
790.
Girl 2,
790.
Girl 3,
790.
Place kids in the right environment and they'll shatter every ceiling you thought existed. So let's talk a little bit about that whole tweet. First of all, what's up with everyone scoring the same on math?
That's weird. It's actually crazy. We all like opened them on the same day and we were all like, oh my gosh, we were all so excited. And I was like, what'd you get? They're like 790. I was like, what'd you get? She's like 790. I'm like, and then we actually have a guy friend who got a 790 as well. And we were like, what literally what just happened? It
I
was
know.
the craziest day
so
ever.
basically, a 790 out of 800 on math means you probably miss one question.
That
It can depend a
infamous
little bit. The
question.
SAT scores, vary by the test, but basically you miss one question.
Right.
And you do this. But what I like about this point was, first of all, the idea of not math science girls. Like, have you ever considered yourself to be a math science type of person?
I mean, I feel like someone could have won a lot of money off of me if they had bet me whether I was going to get above a 750 even, or 720 even, when I was even very young up until just a few months ago, or, since Alpha kind of changed my mindset around math, I just really didn't think I was a math science girl. I mean, look at my sister, 1600. She's a math major at Stanford. We're really close and there's not a ton of competition, but it is kind of where you're like, you place yourself in a different group. It's like, okay, I'm going to excel socially versus in this, realm where it's just impossible. It's not like she's a math girl. She's a math and English girl. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to put myself in this other group. But I think with Alpha's mindset around SAT and just education in general, where it's not an IQ test, there's, you can be a top performing student no matter what. It's just effort. That's something our guides always make sure that we can articulate the number of hours until we get our dream score. So it's not number of IQ points until we get our dream score. It's always like, okay, how many hours do you have until you get a 1500 for students who are aiming for that? It's like 15 hours in math, 5 hours in, English.
Yeah, because this is it's put in the time and the work, learning the level of information that you need. And we'll talk a little more about that. But I will tell you kind of our Alpha philosophy with SAT. SAT, by the way, it's one part of the college application process. There's so many other things that we focus on. But here's what we generally say is like, why not make the colleges say, you know what? They clearly have the SAT as well. They've got that. So 1350 is the commitment that we make to our high school students. Like, we believe that at Alpha, using the kind of prep that we give and learning math and reading and English the way that we teach it, any kid can be top 10%, and that would be a 1350 out of 1600. We have another bar that goes above 1500 as well, but that's kind of what we think is the right answer. And so, having a good SAT score for college apps, it's just another example that colleges can look at and say, okay, they clearly have the ability to do kind of more rigorous stuff. And again, we can argue it's a dumb test, it's a whatever. Although, actually, did you know, Elle, that when colleges made the SAT test optional, what they have found is that kids' performance in college has been correlated with their success on the SAT. And kids who did not submit their SAT scores have generally performed worse. And that's part of the reason that they're going back to test required, because they are actually seeing that the SAT is an indicator of how you'll succeed in college.
It is a component of your application, and what we believe at Alpha, it's the easiest one to kind of hack. Like AP test, you only got one shot, it's kind of like study as much as you can, but it's one test. Your activities list if you come in late, but the SAT is something that you can sit down and just grind and make a standout piece of your college application. For my sister, it really was. For her application for Stanford, it was a huge standout. And so I think that while there's like a ton of other things, most people see SAT as like this ominous, like, oh gosh, like it's kind of luck. There's nothing I can do. But here at Alpha, it's like, no, this is the actual easiest part of your application to just supercharge.
And we'll talk about specifically what you can do. But the other thing I think is important to highlight is a lot of times people will think, well, the SAT is all about expensive tutors and taking expensive courses and all of that kind of stuff. And we actually don't do that here at Alpha. The stuff that our kids will do to prepare is information and resources that you listening out on this, your child can totally go and access. It doesn't 100%. Have to just be this test that a lot of times people say, well, that's linked to privilege and do that, which I actually think in the rest of the world, like in the non-Alpha world, I think that's where people think is like, well, I got to go to a tutor or I got to take an SAT class. No. And we're not that. So let's talk more specifically about what we do at Alpha to help kids do well on the SAT.
I think we have a very interesting strategy regarding the SAT. I think it's not what I think most people's first inclination when they're thinking of getting a perfect score or even a high performing score is what, our guides have done is they've realized, okay, pre-calculus, which is pretty much everyone's taken it in high school, is 3% of the exam. 97% of the exam is algebra. maybe a little bit of algebra 2, like for those last 5 questions on module 2, but it's really just algebra.
Yeah.
And
it's basically your freshman, sophomore year of work. There's not a lot of advanced math, but you are in a time crunch.
And that's exactly where our strategy lies, is to be good at algebra, you have to have fluency in fast math. Is basically, that's like our secret sauce here.
And what's fast math?
Fast math is what's 5 times 5, what's 6 times 7, what's 42 minus 32. Especially, can you understand that 22 over 44 is the same as 1 over 2 instantly? Can you make those... it's completely memorization based.
And fast math is basically stuff that kids should be learning in like 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade. It's multiplication
100%.
tables, division tables. It's some of the basic stuff, right? That is like back there.
Right.
And I think that's an important point. Why do you think fast math is so important with the SAT?
Basically, what's awesome about fast math is it takes away the time pressure. If you can do that, that's what's hard about the SAT is you have to do all of these calculations. You have to do 22 calculations very, very quickly. But if you have fluency where you're not using your working memory slots to do the calculation, you can use it to actually think about the problem, catch your careless mistakes, make sure that you're going about it in the right way. The time, when I got my 790, I had 15 minutes left on module 2, which parents might not understand how crazy that is, but every teen taking the exam will realize that that's unheard of. And it is not because I'm this math genius. I'm just got into BC Calc, but I took geometry last year, and then I did algebra 2 and pre-calculus over the summer. I'm not a math genius at all, but I was able to do this because I was so fluent in my basic math skills.
Yeah. And I think one of the examples that we have for one of our other students that got a 790 in math, she had been at like a 720, kind of hovering in that 720 for the math portion of it. And I think what would have happened in a traditional world, or if she'd gone to maybe a tutor or taken a class, they would just say, you know what, just keep practicing and taking more SAT tests. Just keep doing practice problems and go from that way. Because to be clear, 720 is a great score. And so people would be like, okay, this is what you should do. And instead at Alpha, we said, hey, there's actually something else that we're noticing that's going on here with this student. She is making careless mistakes when it comes to fast math. And so what they did was they had her go back and review 3rd, 4th grade, multiplication tables, all of that, because in that time crunch situation, she was making a careless mistake because she was taking too long to remember what 5 times 6 is.
Right.
And then that would cause problems. And I will tell you, and you're friends with this person, I don't think she liked that advice very much.
Oh, no. I think that was exactly the opposite of what she wanted to hear. She wanted to hear, oh, there's this hack that if you like close your eyes and like do the test backwards, like it all works. You know, she was not excited. You know, I think that a lot of teens are like, I'm not going to go do 2nd grade math or even like kindergarten math. I'm not going to go do that. I'm taking the SAT trying to get a 790. I'm going to go learn pre-calculus. Yeah. I'm going to go master the super hard 5 last questions. When in reality, what you're trying to do is just free up time for those last few. You can't get a 790 or an 800 or even above a 770 if you take 30 seconds to do 4 times 7. Like that's just, you're unable to. And it has nothing to do with IQ and being able to process it fast enough. It's literally just if you don't have those memorized, you can't do it.
And to give a little background, when we think about the learning science principle that is in this whole lesson around the SAT, and that's one of the things that we've been able to do at Alpha is really take all of these learning science principles and put them into the way that we do education. What's happening is when a student doesn't have their fast math memorized, that is taking up basically working memory in the brain. It's not just automatic. And so you're struggling with what's, 4 times 6. And you're also trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to do this more advanced problem?
And the questions are designed to trick you. You can't possibly.
Yeah. So you get overloaded, and it's not, whereas when you actually have fast math, then that is not something that your brain has to think about, and it frees up your cognitive load to be able to say, let's go focus on the hard part of this problem and not get tripped up on the easy part of the problem. And so that's one of the things that I think commonly happens. So this student did, a couple weeks worth of lessons on fast math that allowed her to go back in and in a time crunch quickly go through. Now, fast math for some people, well, first of all, what's interesting, Elle, is so many schools aren't having kids learn their fast math.
What?
Yeah. Did you know that? Like
I
multiplication tables are not required to be memorized
Not
anymore.
like the sheets and the time test?
They're not, they don't, there's a lot of de-emphasis on that. And so you do kind of, you can see why people are struggling with these types of things.
That wraps up part 1 of this episode, but don't worry, there's a part 2 coming soon. Thanks for listening to MacKenzie Price and the Future of Education podcast. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, now is the time to do it, so you can stay up to date on all our episodes. You can connect with MacKenzie on social media and be part of our daily conversation over on Instagram at futureof_education. For more info about the show and our guests, you can always visit futureofeducationpod.com. Lastly, if you're loving what you're learning, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back in your feed soon, but until then, remember, kids are limitless, and it's our job to unlock their potential.